The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
Obviously, we over budgeted last year. I hate to say that I was right, but I was right. So.
And I think that that's what we need to look at more, is trying to get back to what we used to be, where our churches and our families took care of each other instead of relying on the state.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
I take our constitutional rights, the constitutional rights of my constituents, very seriously.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
Mr. Speaker, no matter how you look at it, no matter how you boil this down, there is never any time that a parent's right to govern what their children see and what they're exposed to should ever be bypassed.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
We need to start making Idaho first. We need to start making America first.
We need to be protecting our First Amendment rights, not inventing ways to slowly chip away at them.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ask unanimous consent that the roll call used for suspension of rules on Senate Bill 1180 now be used for the suspension of rules on Senate Bill 1181, making it possible for the immediate consideration of Senate Bill 1181.
Unanimous consent has been requested. Is there objection? Hearing on the roll call use suspension of rules on Senate Bill 1180 where 69 ayes, 1 absent and excused. The rules are suspended in the House under consideration. Senate Bill 1181. Good gentleman from 29.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd ask for unanimous consent to dispense with further reading of Senate Bill 1181.
Unanimous consent has been requested. Is there objection? Hearing on the gentleman on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What this is a policy bill related to the State Public Defender's Office. I'm going to keep this fairly brief because we had the budget bill that was passed, and I explained a lot about what's going on with that office in that debate. But we've worked this session on a policy bill to try to provide some additional clarification in the management.
All right, folks, good morning. Welcome to wherever you are in the great state of Idaho. Matt Edwards here. It is April 3rd, 2025. The session is still going, and we've got a special program for you today, so sit back and get ready for it. The House just passed Senate Bill 1180, which dealt with, where did my notes go? You know, you open up the show and then all of a sudden your notes are gone. It dealt with the use of automated license plate readers relative to official law enforcement activities and precludes automated license plate reader systems from being used for non-law enforcement purposes. That bill passed overwhelmingly there, 45-24. And that just happened as right before we went to air. Earlier this morning, Senate Bill 1211, if you were watching our Citizens Alliance Idaho feed over on X, you would have seen the debate on making ivermectin over the counter here in Idaho. And that bill did pass in the Senate as it was debated. And I was having a little bit of PTSD this morning because hearing the exact same arguments, the debunked arguments, if you will, about ivermectin, it was incredible. It was incredible to hear those same arguments from the Democrats and even some Republicans on the dangers of ivermectin. It's absolutely incredible. But here we are. 2 states have already made it over the counter, Tennessee and Arkansas. And hopefully this bill will make its way through the House before we go home, because another bill that was voted on and passed in the Senate today was the last of the maintenance budget bills. Now, if you recall, we separated the way the budgeting is happening here in Idaho. So there's the maintenance bills. These are all the big 10 maintenance bills that fund our government, which is the only thing that the legislature is required to do, to fund the essentials of our government. And once they pass those 10 bills, they can go home. And so they passed that final budget bill this morning in the Senate, and they can technically, at some point, just go home. And we don't know if that'll happen today or if they'll come back tomorrow and finish up the rest of the bills, because we're still waiting for round 2 of the Idaho Medical Freedom Act. Obviously, the ivermectin bill just went through, and there's a bunch of bills still waiting in the wings to get heard and pushed through. So we will see what happens in these final, what I imagine are going to be the final 2 days of the session. We have a few guests coming up on this program today. Some very active, well, now I just stole the word, active activists. I mean, these are people who are active in their community and trying to make change for the better here in Idaho. And it's going to be really fun to talk to them. But before we do, folks, because we're nearing the end of the session here, what an absolute onslaught of conservative wins on bills this year. It has been absolutely incredible. I know a lot of people like to focus on the negative. When you walk into the Sistine Chapel and you look up and you see like a missing tile, everybody focuses on the missing tile and doesn't look at the grandeur of the rest of the Sistine Chapel. But we're gonna focus. So there are obviously going to be some tough losses, and we're going to talk to somebody today about one of their tough losses. But the strides that have been made, even with some of the bills that we'll talk about later today. But I want to go through some of the bills right now that have just been huge wins, and these come at us in no particular order. But maybe, or at least maybe in the order of the wins. So, let's get to it. The first one was House Bill 93. This was touted as the school choice bill of the session. This provides a tax credit for those who are sending their child to a school other than public school, whether you're homeschooling, whether you're sending to private school or a co-op or something. So that's House Bill 93. Was signed by the governor. The mask bill, that was a huge win, right? Trying to get that mask bill through. That was House Bill 32, prohibiting mask mandates in Idaho. You've got all the tax bills that came through. One of them was House Bill 40, which lowered the income tax rate. You had Senate Bill 1001, which is the anti-SLAPP legislation, which protects you against frivolous lawsuits of defamation, libel, slander, that sort of thing. Even for our local governments, House Bill 172 allows city council people to look at the agenda items on the agenda for that meeting and say, whoa, there's something on the consent agenda item that I think deserves a longer debate and maybe even some public comment. We need to pull that off the consent agenda. Now they're able to do that rather than have those things get rammed through. House Bill 97 dealt with emergency evacuations. You know how like during a crisis, they want you to evacuate your home? Well, this bill here says that you cannot force someone to leave their home if they feel compelled to stay and either protected or they feel more comfortable at home. I mean, this is individual rights. You should have that right. Senate Bill 1019 is the anti-swatting bill. This makes swatting a crime. If you're not familiar with the crime of swatting, it's when you call in a fake, you call 911 and you claim that there's like a fake crime happening at someone's house that's so crazy, like someone's at gunpoint, somebody murdered their entire family, and then they send in the SWAT team to just bust through the door and arrest or kill anybody that they see. It's very dangerous, and you've heard it made national news lately. Is it 37? H37 moved firing squad up to be the primary method of execution in the state of Idaho. And I bring this one up because in addition to that, the death penalty for child sex crimes, for pedophiles, child pedophile crimes. House Bill 380, that was also signed by the governor. So I've seen a lot of memes go around where it says in Idaho, if you're a child sex predator, you could be shot for that, shot to death. You put those two together, it's like peanut butter and chocolate. H41, dealing with flags in schools. No more putting up of all the other different political and ideological and mafia type flags. No more trans flags, no more BLM flags, and no Gadsden flags. No, none of these things flying from the rooftops or in the classrooms out there. Let's see what else. Senate Bill 1007. This was particularly important. Senate Bill 1007. This bill removed a line in the statute that said that when school boards are having their meetings and when people show up for public comment, that they are not allowed to talk about anything that's not on the agenda. So if you went to your school board meeting and you had you wanted to bring some attention and some awareness to an issue that happened within your school, they could have prevented you from speaking out during a public school meeting if it wasn't on the agenda. And this is highly important. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've encountered or even participated in bringing something to light that otherwise would not have gotten the attention. It would have just been like shouting into the wind. Like nobody would have heard it. It would have just been like backfilled somewhere else. So this is a very important bill for not only for your First Amendment free speech rights, but for notifying the rest of the community about something that may or may not be going on in your school district. So very important bill. That was signed by the governor. All of these are now law, folks. These are the wins that we're talking about here. They're all wins. House Bill 59, the Medical Defense Act. This allows, Medical Ethics Defense Act. This says that you can't force doctors or people in practicing medicine to perform procedures that go against their conscience. I mean, imagine forcing a doctor to partake in a procedure or a treatment that goes against their not only maybe even their Hippocratic what do they call it, the Hippocratic Oath, right? Going against that, but going against their moral conscience, whether it's religious or just their own beliefs. Very important bill. House Bill 270 was signed by the governor. This deals with the indecent exposure, updating the indecent exposure law because we live in crazy land. We live in a clown world now. We're out in Nampa, Idaho. They had a pride parade, and men were showing off their brand new female breasts to the public. So can't do that anymore. House Bill 304 is a property tax bill that seeks to help reduce your property taxes. Now, remember, the legislature, they can't lower your rates on property taxes. The only thing that they can do is provide more money to the counties and the cities so that they don't have to come to you for property taxes, right? To cover their costs down there. So it's a big mess here in Idaho that the legislature really can't do much except just, say, okay, we'll pay for the school facilities or we'll pay for school maintenance so you don't have to impose levies. Big wins there. Senate Bill 1046. This teaches children in school how babies are formed in the womb, right? So that we're better informed about what goes on inside. You hear young people walking around saying, "Oh, it's just a clump of cells." It's just a clump of cells. It's just goo that's going on inside the mother's womb. No, it's more miraculous than that. It's an amazing process, and now that's going to be put into our curriculum in our schools. That children will learn the most recent, up-to-date, scientific, scientifically backed curriculum on how humans develop in the womb. It's incredible. I keep going to my womb, but I don't have a womb. I was in a womb once, but I don't have a womb. Senate Bill 1034. This deals with allowing foster parents to protect their homes and their family by not having to be succumb to extra rules when it comes to their Second Amendment rights and the firearms that they store in their home. I'm going to go through these quickly, guys. Senate House Bill 264, preventing men from claiming they're women and going into women's prisons or juvenile centers or in higher education, like protecting women inside their private spaces, whether they're in women's prisons, whether they're in juvenile detention centers, whether they are in college and higher ed. I mean, huge wins signed by the governor. Campus free speech. This is a bill that House Bill 240 that Representative Barbara Ehart has been trying to get through the legislature for years and years and years. And this year, boom, signed by the governor. H345. This was the Medicaid expansion bill that sought to rein in. This was hotly debated because you had some people thinking that it was going too far, and then you had people thinking that it was not going far enough. This was putting guardrails on Medicaid expansion, which I think now our Medicaid costs in this state has gone over $5 billion. A lot of it your federal tax dollars, but another, I don't know, $500 million or so added on through the Idaho budget. So this thing is just ballooning, and 345 seeks to try and rail it in, but we need to do more. We could also even just maybe get rid of Medicaid expansion. How about that? Senate Bill 1027 says you cannot deny somebody a bank account. You can't just cancel their banking accounts because you disagree with their political beliefs or their religious beliefs. So many things here. We're gonna get to more of them in a minute, but we're gonna take just a short break. When we come back, we're gonna have our guest here with us, Melissa Radford. She had a bill, Senate. If you want to bring this up on your own tablet, there, Senate Bill 1162. It died on the Senate floor. But there is such an amazing history with this bill because it was really driven through even to this process by a couple of great folks that we're going to talk to just next. So we'll take a short break and we'll be right back.
And that's exactly what happened. You want to pull the tape? You can pull the tape because we now got video.
The dictionary defines a pledge as something that you give as a sign that you'll keep a promise. As Idahoans, that's what we're looking for in our elected leaders. A sign that they'll keep their word. Talk is cheap, and so are political promises, hidden agendas, and special interests. This is why we created the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge, affirming the values Idahoans have been living by for over 100 years, inspired by the only two documents everyone has agreed to live by. So when an Idaho legislator signs our pledge, inviting voters to publicly hold them accountable, that's what we call political integrity. The pledge restores trust and honesty between voters and their legislators. It means protecting our shared values and ensuring your voice is heard in Boise. And that is priceless. Thank your legislator for having the political courage to sign the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge. And if they haven't, it's time to ask why.
Mr. Chairman, speak in favor of the motion. Everyone who is acquainted with me in the legislature knows my favoritism for local government and my career in supporting local government, protecting local government, advancing local government. And the fact that I sponsored and spoke for the Senate concurrent resolution that's been referenced today. But when we sit in the legislature, we have to consider the fundamental rights of Idahoans. And if you take an oath like we do as legislators to the Idaho Constitution, we become familiar with it. And Article 1, Section 1 of the Idaho Constitution, the very first piece of the Idaho Constitution, is about our rights. And it says that one of our inalienable rights is the possession and the protection of property. Property rights. Property rights far outweighs the protection of local government's control. And so when I'm given the option of weighing what's more important, making sure the city council has control over people or protecting people's property rights, I'm here to tell you I'm always going to err on the side of protecting people's property rights, and I've sworn an oath to do it. And so that's where I'm going to land today. I'm going to support the motion to send it the 14th order, and we're going to see if we can make this better and protect people's property rights. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Well, that was Senator Pro Tem, head of the Senate, Senator Kelly Anthon, talking about how property rights and individual rights trump local government, and that was being said during the hearing on Senate Bill 1162, which sought to change some of the rules and regulations and remove some of those things out of the control of local governments when it comes to short-term rentals. And last session, we did have on Melissa Radford, and she joins us again now to talk about this issue. Melissa, it's good to see you. Welcome to the program again. You guys have been down at the Capitol. We've been following your tweets. I've run into you when I was down there. You guys seem like you're always down there. You have been lobbying on behalf of a lot of short-term rental folks across the state on this issue because what you have found is you're coming up against. You're bucking up against the local control that the cities want to overregulate, in your opinion, what's happening at the short-term rental market. And what I wanted to ask you about is a little bit about the bill, but also about your activism in this arena, because it's so inspiring, and it really is almost like what people should be doing when they have an issue like this that they want to make sure that their legislators are aware of. So welcome to the program. What can you tell me a little bit about what you do and what your alliance in short-term rentals is all about?
I was a neonatal nurse practitioner for 20 years, and I was fortunately able to retire from that recently because of our short-term rentals. And we moved to Idaho from Oregon several years ago to escape kind of the overregulation of a blue state and a place that we just didn't feel like we could, live, and to Idaho where we would find freedom. And we started doing a big remodel on a house here that we were going to turn into a short-term rental, and we're really excited about it. And then a couple of years ago, we saw that they were going to be talking about short-term rentals in city council meetings. So we showed up and found out that, the current regulations are pretty decent here in Coeur d'Alene, but they were recommending some really crazy things. And, so we got involved. We just started a Facebook group and accumulated just a bunch of people here in the area who we ended up having to, raise money and get a lawyer to write a letter to stop the city council from doing some super illegal, unconstitutional changes. And that was successful at the time. So we were really, happy about that, but knowing that there was going to be just constant threat of you never can plan for the future if you never know they're going to keep adding things on. And I mean, it's right. That way with every right. And then we started getting to know people across the state and realizing that there is major overreach happening across the state in lots of towns. Just crazy things. I could tell you a bunch of things, but that has just led us to build up just a Facebook group. And also now we're working on starting up a nonprofit association to network with people across the state and to help with this advocacy stuff. So
yeah. So okay. So then explain a little bit your rationale here, and I'm totally on board with this. Like when it comes to property rights and your individual rights, you hear the argument from the city council side that says, well, what about the property rights and the regulation rights of the folks, of your neighbors, and so it kind of goes back and forth, right? Like, but to me, it doesn't necessarily make sense to argue that point too, because you're not asking for privileges. You're just asking to be treated like any other person on the block, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, a person's property rights aren't inhibited by some living next to a short-term rental. I mean, you don't pick your neighbors. You could live next to a long-term rental, next to 3 dogs that bark all night, next to whatever. You don't get to choose what your neighbors do. But if we were to violate their rights, that's where the piece comes in. So I think, the cities will talk about a lot of scare tactics that aren't backed up by evidence, like there are party houses all over. You really need to worry about, these kinds of things happening, or, that we affect affordable housing or availability of housing. So, there's actual data that proves those things untrue. We did, we pulled FOIA data for the CDAPD for noise and disturbance complaints over 2 different time periods over the last couple of years, and compared those to permitted short-term rentals, and we were less than 1% of the complaints of noise and disturbance complaints in this town. I mean, so it's over. You can overblow and say, worry about parties or whatever, but parties are not allowed at any short-term rental. If you have a party and you're on the Airbnb platform, you will be kicked off. So this is, and none of us want parties at our house. We all want our guests to be good neighbors and make sure that happens. There are ordinances for noise and parking and all these different things that exist in our communities. Though we're asking to be subject to those same ordinances equally. So we're not, like you said, we're not asking for anything special. We're not asking for anything other than equal treatment under the law and due process. If there's a complaint, you need to be able to, it needs to be followed up and backed up, and then that needs to be dealt with. But turning neighbor against neighbor, which is what the cities have done, it's just discrimination. It's not fact-based.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then this bill that you were backing, that you were championing, and I imagine you had some you were allowed to, or not allowed, but you were part of this, one of the stakeholders that were in crafting these bills here. And it basically was just saying, like, look, like we want to be treated equally. We don't want to have extra restrictions put on us, and so forth. So then talk to me now about why you felt it was so important to travel to Boise, meet with legislators, and what kind of reactions you got when you started explaining what your bill would do.
I mean, short-term rentals are something that legislators don't really know a lot about, and people in general don't know a lot about unless they are short-term rental owners or travel in short-term rentals frequently, or those kinds of things. So people hear a lot of talking points, those scare tactics that, like I said, aren't backed by data, and then they believe those to be true. For example, is worrying about big corporations coming and buying up a bunch of properties and turning them into short-term rentals. That is literally not happening in Idaho. There are 0 big companies that have bought short-term rentals, and more than 70% of the short-term rentals in Idaho are owned by Idahoans. So we know that there's paid lobbyists for the cities and the counties and the resort cities that are at the Capitol 24/7 that are advocating on behalf of the cities. And we've heard the lies. They're literally telling lies to legislators about us. And so, based on kind of our work last year and going to the Capitol to try and get a hearing, we knew that being there in person made a big difference. We were not paid to be lobbyists, and we were there. We went for 5 weeks. We were at the Capitol this year, driving down every week. So we drove the equivalent of more than across the country to be down there, and gave up a lot of time and money and to be there and advocate on our own behalf. But we built relationships. We were able to move things forward and show the legislators how important this is to us. A lot of times we'd walk in there and they would be on the defensive about, knowing the talking points. And as we started to share our stories and what's happening across the state, they would lean in. They're like, oh, this is property rights. This is not about, you guys being a big, huge problem in your communities. And we were able to share those facts with them directly. And I mean, an email only goes so far, but being able to tell your story in person makes a huge difference. And we got a lot farther this year than we did last year.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you guys made it out of the committee. The bill started in the Senate this time. I believe last year it started in the House.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So then when it came to the debate on the floor, I remember asking you in a direct message, because all of a sudden everybody was talking about business licenses. And I thought, oh, this wasn't something that we were talking about property rights before, and the city's breaking down on that, but all of a sudden everybody's talking about business licenses, and then you saw the bill just die on the House floor with a lot of folks bringing up that argument. I mean, there were some that were always obviously taking the sides of the cities and the local government, but then you saw this sort of other faction come up and from the more the conservative side and say, we're not really into this whole regulation with the business license thing. Can you explain a little bit about how that all of a sudden popped up?
Well, that was really interesting and a surprise, but actually kind of not a surprise because the IFF had rated it -1 for a couple of reasons. The main reason, actually, our bill had in it kind of what we saw as a compromise, which I don't disagree with the IFF's argument, but part of our bill was you treat everybody the same, like we're all under the same ordinances, but if there are 3 violations of an ordinance that's proven and convicted, that the permit could be removed from our property. But so basically what they didn't like is that the owner was held responsible for the actions of the guests, which we shouldn't be. But we also wanted the safety of, if there's a problem property, there's something that can be done about it. So that's why we were willing to make that compromise. But that was one of the things that the IFF didn't like. But so the point to me is the business license piece too, and that piece is that the conservative people that voted against it and the majority of the Senate in general wants less regulation, not more. So I really feel like the cities may take this as a win, but I really see it as a win for us, that property rights are sacrosanct in Idaho, and that what they want to see is a bill with more free property rights and more freedom, more equal treatment under the law, more due process. Honestly, long-term rental owners don't get a business license or, any kind of permit.
That was going to be my question.
Yeah.
A landlord doesn't need to get a business license to rent a home for a lease, like leasing their home.
Exactly. So that I think what we'll find, and we are not giving up on this, there will be a bill again next year. I think the cities will probably wish they would have gone with this one, because I think that it will provide us even more protection. And so I'm excited to continue. It was a really hard road, but it was fun, and we got to know so many legislators. They know us now, and we know them. We met security guards and cleaners and all kinds of people. We made really dear friends, and so I'm just excited to continue this, and I it's been fun.
Okay. And one last question too: Are landlords of long-term rentals, are they responsible for their tenants' behaviors as well?
No.
No, I didn't think so. Okay.
No.
Well, like I said, your story of just the tenacious attitude towards your issue is very inspiring, and it just shows how much work it does take, but sometimes you can go down there and knock it out of the park right away. And we've seen bills that have come up the first time this year just get sail right through because it's a no-brainer. And some of these things they are nuanced a little bit, but like you said, you've learned more, and the next year's bill may be even better. And be careful on that. So all right,
I was just going to say, we've been able to educate the legislators so much more on what's going on. So, this is our future, our retirement plan, our, everything. So it's critically important to us. Yeah.
It is. And to a lot of people. I mean, it's especially Idahoans. I mean, your statistic was 70% of short-term rentals are owned by Idahoans?
Yep. And then the rest of them are mainly people who want to move here eventually and like to come visit and want to, have that house available for them, but can't necessarily afford to leave it empty. I mean,
yeah. Okay.
And we contribute so much to the local economy. That's a
absolutely.
piece.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's great. Especially when you live, I mean, when you go to an Airbnb, you also want to go to the local market and stock up on the food and all that stuff too. So I love it. I love Airbnb. My only beef is some Airbnb landlords, they make you scrub the toilets before you go. You got to take out the garbage. You got to hire a lawnmower. Like, you got to do something about that.
I know. And that's what we'll do with our association as well, is like give people out some best practices, because we're
Yeah.
like that too. You're paying a cleaning fee. You shouldn't be doing work.
All right. I like that. You're my kind of people. Very good. All right, Melissa,
Thank
thanks
you.
for joining us. I really appreciate it. We'll check in with you again.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. All right, very good, very good. We will see you. We will see you on the other side of the break. We'll catch up to speed what's going on the House and the Senate, and then we will we'll see it. We'll come back. We'll be right back.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government and what we were tasked to do.
Attorney General if he finds violations, and people can bring him violations, that's for sure. And then he is the one who decides how extreme the penalties might be. Right now they are 10% or $50,000. He can say it's $1 or he can say it's $50,000 depending on the violation.
All right, folks, here is Representative Judy Boyle. She's the House sponsor for Senate Bill 1198. It did get a little bit of an amendment in the House, on the House side. Senator Ben Taves carried this bill through the Senate as it made its way through there. And I like to say that this is DEI is it's on its way to being DEAD. In higher ed. This is fantastic. We covered this bill earlier this week when it was in the Senate. So the debate is was that an opening debate or was that a closing debate? I believe that was an opening debate. And so I imagine we're going to see some folks debate on this. But if this gets through, look, folks, if this bill gets through here today and it makes its way to the Senate and big education Governor Brad Little signs it, I mean, it is going to be another huge victory. Another huge victory. It's great. So I'm being told that was the closing debate there. And I don't know why the clerk hasn't unlocked the machine yet. Should we listen in?
And Title IX, right? Equity in athletics and activities for women, and the Americans with Disabilities Act. Now, somebody who has
usually
had
people
to complete
don't
these trainings
talk after closing
on these topics, plus many
so I think
more.
That was opening debate.
Homelessness for children, bloodborne pathogens. Stop.
We'll let them debate, and we'll keep tabs on what on how it goes. Okay. All right. A couple more wins. We got to get you some more wins before we get our next guest in here. Set House Bill 352. Did we talk about this one? This is House Bill 352. This was brought by Representative Dale Hawkins. This says that this whole like gender identity and all of that stuff will not be taught in school. It won't be used as some sort of lesson plan. It's not going to be a topic du jour in any of the classes in K through 12. If students have questions about their gender identity, they should be talking to their parents. Okay. It should not be happening in school. Our teachers are not therapists. They're not mental health doctors, right? As much as we think that like schools is the place. I mean, sometimes I go to these school websites and they have a tab that says mental health. And I'm like, since when did our schools become mental health clinics? They are not mental health clinics. And we need to focus school on where it should be focused on, which is reading, writing, arithmetic, right? Civics, creating good people with good character. That's what school's about. All this other gender identity and all this nonsense should be left up to the parents and professional mental health folks and doctors that the parents can go seek for their children. So that stuff will not be in our public schools. That was signed into law, K through 12, signed into law. Similarly, House Bill 239, which says that that parents can opt in their child. They must be opted in to a lesson that deals with human sexuality and explicit materials that may be discussed during class. I mean, I don't know where any of that might be appropriate, but right now it has to be an opt-in. Okay, and this is not sex ed. I mean, there's so much misinformation about this bill that this is now changing sex ed to an opt-in only. This is not about sex ed. Sex ed is its own thing. And sexual education is all about reproduction, right? And learning about the body. That's sexual education. This whole stuff with human sexuality and sexual orientation and all of the different things that go along with all of the graphic things that we've been seeing happening in school, and they get snuck into different curriculums and different classes peppered throughout. All that stuff, if it's going to be taught in school, then you need to have an opt-in form to allow the student to be in that class for that lesson. So that's an opt-in thing. So that was passed. Shifting gears, House Bill 268, which says that you can fire these bureaucrats. There's like these mid-level, high-level, whatever bureaucrats that apparently we played the clip from Representative Josh Tanner that they can never get fired, right? They're somehow immune from just getting fired at will for a poor job or for whatever reason. So now that executive employees are now going to be serving at will, just like everybody else, at will employment. Passed, signed by the governor. Big win. When it comes to elections, we had House Bill 310. We would see Representative Steve Tanner talk about this bill. This cleaned up the code to make so that all the county clerks were on board with understanding how and what it meant to have individual markings on each of the ballots, so that every ballot is a secured ballot with an individual mark on it that can't be duplicated, and that is controlled by the clerk and by the county. And so, very important election integrity bill, signed and passed by the governor. Very, very good. And then the other one, what is this? I can't even read my writing here. House Bill 199. What is that? Oh, the refugee stuff. So House Bill 199, this one reined in the services that we give to refugees, migrants, and that sort of thing, because they were getting more services than you and I would be qualified for. So now it's just leveling the playing field. It said, look, if you're going to provide emergency services or any medical services that are paid for by the taxpayer, you can't be giving more to refugees and migrants and the like that we have no access to. It just doesn't make sense. These are our tax dollars, right? We pay for our own things. It sounds very selfish. I know, God, we're such a selfish society. Everybody's selfish. What is that great clip from Milton Friedman when he's talking to Phil Donahue about greed? He says, well, everybody's greedy, right? I mean, who isn't greedy? Who doesn't act out of their own self-interest, right? The only person that never did, that ever walked this earth, that never acted out of self-interest was Jesus Christ. And we all would love to be like him, but it ain't never going to happen. Not on this earth. There's only one perfect person. And you know what they did to him? They killed him. Never forget that. They killed him. Oh, but I digress. Okay. So those are just some of the huge wins that we have seen. And it is so great. So great. Elections have consequences. A lot of these bills have been trying to get through for a long time. And they just never made it. You know, the campus free speech, they raised the food credit, food tax credit. And I know, look, there's a huge argument about the whole food tax. And should we or should we not have a tax on our groceries? But until that gets removed, at least they raise the credit so Idahoans get some of their money back. So you got to say that's a win as well. Small sellers, small sellers. You don't have to register and pay taxes if your kid's running a little lemonade stand, or if you sell eggs by the side of the road. You know, you don't have to pay taxes or collect taxes if you're a small seller on that. I think it's $5,000 in a year if you're selling less than $5,000 a year in your own products and outside. But there are some that are still stuck. There are bills that are either stuck in committee, especially over in the Senate State Affairs. They're stuck there. But there are some things that are still stuck. Things that are waiting to get signed by the governor is the soda and the big SNAP thing about excluding soda and candy from SNAP benefits. That's awaiting a signature by the governor. There's also some stuff on immigration. E-Verify. We haven't seen the E-Verify make its way through the House. The Medical Freedom Act there's two different bills in the Senate and the House. Those need to be going. So a lot of great stuff still to be had, but this list is long, folks. This is my scratch sheet. It's long of great wins. One bill that has made its way all the way through, and it's sitting at the governor's desk waiting to be signed, is House Bill 96. House Bill 96 is the other flag bill. House Bill 41 dealt with flags flying in public schools. House Bill 96 deals with flags that were flying on government property, like outside City Hall or along the poles, the city poles, the city lights, down the street, or any sort of government building. It's made its way through, and it's finally hitting on the governor's desk. And another local activist had her hand in that bill, and she was adamant that this thing get all the way through. And we want to welcome her to the program. Lynn Bradescu was with us a few weeks ago. Good to see you, Lynn.
Hi there. I have my phone muted, so I'm not disturbed. So, because people are calling me all the time, I'm so popular. Not.
You're so
Yeah. The flag bill is on the governor's desk. He has until the 7th around 11 o'clock to sign it. I've been checking it every day. And I want to tell you that was a lot of work. I got to give kudos to those legislators that get these bills through. It's unbelievable what it takes.
Let's start from the beginning here, okay? Because you're somebody who said, now, did you know that this bill was coming, or were you talking to legislators saying, hey, what can we do? Like, what was the impetus behind this?
Well, I brought it to the winter meeting as a resolution. That's how it started.
Okay, with the GOP, right.
I had a resolution that I brought to the GOP. It passed unanimously. Everybody loved it. Then there was sitting on Josh Tanner's desk, and Heather Scott walked into his office and said, I need a bill. And he goes, well, here's a really good one. And I had worked with Josh over a year ago to draft the bill. So he already had it in draft form. So Heather picked it up and she ran with it. And it actually went through the House in January. And then it sat in somebody's desk for a whole month. That person, you could probably figure out who that was, but
yeah, well, it was probably in the Senate State Affairs under Senator Jim Guthrie. We're not adverse to naming names here. I mean right. that's where it's at. So, but he did let it get a hearing.
Right, and she had to, it was a lot of maneuvering, and I'm down there every day at the Capitol, politicking for it. I felt like a lobbyist. It was crazy, and then finally there was an amendment to it. Oh, there we are. Yeah, me testifying. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, so what was the amendment to it? What can you explain a little bit of that and what your thinking on that is too?
Well, the amendment was to allow college flags to be flown on college campuses. So I didn't have a problem with that. I mean, unless the college is a commie college and they're going to fly Hamas flag, bring up another bill next year.
Right. So, yeah. So then, yeah. Tell me a little bit about like you said, you were down there lobbying for this bill. You're a citizen citizen lobbyist on this bill, on this issue. What was the interactions that you were having with some of the legislators down there?
Well, everybody said they loved it and they wanted it to go through, except for Achilles. And when Heather brought it forward in the first time, he said he voted no, and he got off the dais, and I said, why would you vote no on this? And he said, well, I'm a veteran. And I said, well, thank you for your service, and you do know that this is about the flag that you fought for, not any other flag. Hello. And he just got all snarky with me. So I don't know. I don't know where their heads are at. You know, government does not have the right to free speech. And when a government puts up a flag with another political persuasion or sexual orientation or whatever, that means the government is endorsing that. And that has got to stop.
Yeah. Yeah. You live in the Boise area. And when I was down there, the last couple of years, I've seen that, LGBT pride flag hanging from the official flagpoles of the Boise City Hall. I mean, you've got the American flag, the POW flag, Idaho flag, the Boise flag, and then the pride flag. It's so bizarre.
It's up there right now.
Now, it still is. Yeah.
It's up there right now. And Melissa Winthrop, when they came up in the Senate this last time, she was just completely horrified that she goes, this is, because we passed out photos, and she said, this is my neighborhood, and we love this flag, and this means that we wouldn't be able to gather. And I'm like, oh, come on, gather at your own house, you know.
Oh yeah, people hang those flags all throughout their house all the time. So
right, decorate your house, paint it rainbow colors. I don't care. That's your First Amendment. You can do that, but you can't put it on a government light pole down Harrison Boulevard, beautiful historic Harrison Boulevard, named after Benjamin Harrison, who was the president when Idaho became a state. It's just not okay. It's for a whole month.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, I mean that too. I mean that stuff's gotten way out of control.
Senator Anthon said, and Senator Tay said, this is all flags. You can't hang don't tread on me or the Gadsden flag. None of those flags will be allowed. So you can't pick winners and losers here. It's the American flag, the Idaho flag, the military flags, MIA, POW, and sovereign nations. Those are the flags that represent all of us. Right. And that's what we're saying. Those are the flags that represent all of us. And if you don't think that the American flag doesn't represent you, then just leave. Goodbye. Go somewhere else.
Oh, very good. Okay, well, we're gonna hold out. It's April 7th is the last day that that he has to sign it. If he doesn't sign it, it goes into law anyway. But any chance you think this gets vetoed? I mean, he didn't veto the other bill for schools, right?
I think so. I mean, I think that would be a really dumb thing for him to do.
Yeah, I think it would.
I think he agrees. I mean, why wouldn't you agree? I think he agrees. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we also want to give you a chance to talk about your upcoming series. I know you're having Molly Hemingway at your Syringa series, speaker series. Tell everybody about it.
Well, Molly is super excited to come to Boise. She was just testifying in front of Congress about censorship of the media, and I'm sure she's going to have a lot to say about that. She's the editor-in-chief of the Federalist. She's an amazing journalist. Megan Wold is going to be interviewing her on stage after she does her keynote speech. So that's going to be really good because the two of them are really good friends, and we're going to have some interaction from some of the students that we've invited to ask questions. So it's going to be a fabulous event, April 26th at the Boise Center. You can get tickets online, syringaspeakerseries.org.
And there's the website right there. And just go to the front page probably, and you'll find your find your way to get some tickets.
Right.
Fantastic.
And some luminaries there. I'm sure you won't want to miss some people that are going to be there. I won't mention their names, but it's a great event to come and gather with like-minded people, hear some good information, and walk away after having a good meal, good people, good fellowship. And it's our launch event, so I'm hoping that everybody will get out and support us. And our next event is going to be February 28th, 2026. And stay tuned for the announcement of who's going to be the big speaker for next year. I'm already working on it.
Oh, fantastic. Good. All right. Well, we appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience with 96. And folks, call the governor, 208-334-2100. Tell him to get Lynn's flag bill signed.
Yes, sir. I mean, I look at the list every day, you know, and some of the ones that he already signed. I'm like, I don't understand how he, you know, somebody
He
puts
jumps
them on
around.
and says this one's good, sign this one now, or they're easier, or he wants us to, you know, kind of be on bated breath, waiting to see if he's going to sign it. You know, I mean, that's the power of the pen, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. I think you got it right there. Just a little bit of teasing for everybody. All right. Well, Glenn, good to see you. Thanks so much for dropping by.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, very good. Love that. Let's dip into the House here. Representative Dale Hawkins is talking on here on Senate Bill 1198. This is still the DEI bill, so we'll follow this for just a minute.
And folks, this deserves a green light, a double green light. We need to, and I will agree, the colleges, they have moved on. Well, not moved on, they have improved. That doesn't stop us from doing the right thing. This is right. Let's take care of this. Thank you.
Further debate on the motion. Gentleman from 11.
To debate for the bill, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you. There's been a lot of good arguments made back and forth on both sides of this issue. To echo the good gentleman from District 2, my apologies, hard to see behind me. I would agree that this bill doesn't go far enough, but I think one of the bigger issues that we need to go back and focus on as a country, what made America great was not just our differences, but our ability to come together and to work past the differences and to be people who are focused on a common cause and a common goal. The very notion of DEI and critical theory all has roots in Marxism. If you go back and you look at any country that has succumbed to a government that fell under Marxist theory, whether it was Russia with Lenin or China with Mao, these countries devolved into famine.
Gentleman 16.
I need to object to this. We're way off the bill with this history lesson.
Gentlemen, we were way off the bill a long time ago, but I felt it was important to let everybody go. But I don't think anybody's listening now either. So good gentlemen, try to keep it to the bill and let's get on.
I'll make it quick. Marxist ideologies where critical theory and DEI comes from is a bad thing. And I cite the examples of the countries of China and Russia underneath those leaders, Mao and Stalin.
Speaker, I think your advice is being ignored by the good gentleman.
Good gentlemen, let's debate the bill. I understand the history lesson and it's a good one, but let's keep to the bill.
Ultimately, what we need to do as a country is to stop focusing on the merits of gender and race, but let's focus on what we need to do to make ourselves a better country and the merits of the qualities of that person. And so to not be teaching or requiring courses in our universities that are funded by our tax dollars, where we're indoctrinating our kids, our children, our adults, with things that are destructive to the very elements that make our country great, I think is very good. So I'm asking for your green light on this bill.
Thank you, good gentlemen. Is there further debate on the motion? Hearing none. Good lady from 33.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate the bill.
Lady has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Friends, if I may, real quickly, of course, I was one of them who got to sit on that committee and work with these good people. But I'm afraid that sometimes I probably should sit, but there's been a little bit of misdirection, misinformation. Not all of us were here back in 2019, 2020. And people like me, when we first brought up what was happening, the impetus for all of this, I was inundated, just like the good lady from 9, just like some of our colleagues who aren't here. We were inundated from the students across the state, particularly those who are close, with the problems they were having with their humanities, with the fact that not just that they had to learn about DEI related material, but they couldn't disagree. That's the problem. They wanted to disagree and they were shut down, told to be quiet, and their grade reflected it, and they brought us their grades. This is what really began this whole movement in fighting what was happening, because it's not right and it's not American. It's not what our university, it's not a matter of, hey, can we be exposed to ideas? Absolutely, we can be exposed to ideas, but the other side's got to be exposed to ideas too. It's a two-way street. When it ceases to be a two-way street, it becomes indoctrination. And that's the line we've crossed. Our State Board of Education recognized it, which is why they brought up the resolutions they did, preceding the fact that we are about to have the committee that was formed that was, knowing that we'd be bringing legislation forward. And folks, we're not the only ones who's done this. We've got Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Texas. We have a lot of other states that have done the very same thing to say it is not right to continue to teach this to our kids. It's not, when I say teach, that this is the only option. I believe we're all capable of learning all things both ways. That's what this language does. Let me just remind you, take humanities, for example. There's a lot of coursework and options in humanities. It's just saying you can still have it. You can teach all the DEI you want, but you also have to offer then other courses where a kid's not forced to take that. If you're in a class that's required, you can't force them to basically accept that premise. Now, you can have stuff in there, but you got to be able to express and disagree and uphold your feelings. Or your thoughts. That's what we're saying. We've gone too far. This is not, for those of you who may think this was a quick reaction, oh my gosh, it is not a quick reaction at all. This has been brewing in large part since 2019. Every single year, for those of you who haven't been here, we have stood here and talked about this, and many of my colleagues out here have stood right here on the floor. I'm getting text messages, word to our media, I'm going to delete it. I'm getting text messages from those at the universities agreeing, saying we needed to do this, it's time. I am deleting it right now. Don't put in the FOIA request. So
Too late.
So with that, I urge your green light. Thank you.
For the debate on the motion and FOIA requests. Joan 25.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Debate.
Joan has the floor.
I was kind of conflicted whether or not to get up and speak on this, but I felt a kind of impression to get up and speak about this. A couple of years ago, I took a poli-sci class, and in that poli-sci class, there was required reading. The first chapter of that book talked about one of the first legislators ever elected in U.S. history that was LGBTQ. I was very frustrated. I was very upset about this because I have fought and bled for this country. And I was using my post 9/11 GI Bill to pay for this education. And we had this kind of material. There was no way for me really to go to the professor and talk about this issue. No way to go and bring anything like this up. For me, it was really personal because I think there was a lot of laudable people throughout history. We could have talked about our founding fathers, about some of the young men and even the young women that helped found this country. But instead we chose to go and focus on that issue. It was just something that I couldn't stand. It was antithetical to my personal values and my personal beliefs. I really appreciate this bill being brought forward. I think it's going to be a great thing. And as far as a lot of these issues, Vivek Ramaswamy talked about some of this stuff. And one of the things he said is that he thought as far as racism goes, that it was atrophying and dying until we revitalized it and we brought it back with a lot of the stuff we've seen throughout society. I want to encourage you to go and put your green light up on this, and I'll be voting for it. Thank you.
For debate on the motion. Joe 19.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have an empty stomach. I'd like to debate the bill.
Glad your stomach's empty. Gentleman has the floor.
And I will not promise to be quick, but I will promise to be honest. And the reason I have to do that is because every single time that a young black kid in the state, and I wasn't in the legislature at the time, but we all remember the kid in Dietrich who was sodomized by a bunch of white bullies with one out there. Every time something like that happens in the state, I get a call. Call always starts to say, can't do anything. So even though I know this is going to pass. We all want to be treated fairly. We all want to be treated. I get that. I get the idea of we don't see color, we shouldn't see color. I get that. I get this idea that we should all be treated decently, fairly. But all of the evidence and all of the research says that's not true. That's not actually the way things work. We do. We all have implicit bias, and pretty soon we won't be able to teach people involuntarily about that, but it's true. We do see color. As much as we don't like to admit it, we do.
Well, folks, Representative Mathias promised that he's not going to be quick. So we're going to dip out of the show here. We'll keep you posted on social media how this vote goes. Or, of course, you can go to citizensallianceidaho.org. Head over to the live stream that we carry there, and you can continue to watch the debate happen. We invite you, of course, as always, idahosignal.live to listen to the audio portion, the audio version of the program, looping 24/7. And we'll be back tomorrow with the Friday show. Thanks so much, folks. Take care.
This bill, I think, puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.